Have you ever wondered how Vietnamese criminal gangs, names that seem to only appear in small and narrow areas, can extend their influence across Southeast Asia and even Europe and North America? Who are they? How have they managed to survive and thrive in a competitive and violent underworld? In this journey, we will delve into every hidden corner of these mysterious criminal networks. From their origins, organizational structures, to the sophisticated strategies they use to control territories. Get ready, because this story will make you see the underworld through a completely new lens. When it comes to criminal gangs in Southeast Asia, Vietnamese organizations are always among the most notable names. Not limited to domestic activities, these gangs have expanded their operations across the region. From Cambodia, Thailand, and Malaysia to Vietnamese communities in Europe and North America. This raises the question, how have these organizations managed to extend their reach so far? The scope of activities conducted by Vietnamese gangs is diverse, including drug trafficking, human trafficking, extortion, and money laundering. They often exploit strategic transportation routes in Southeast Asia, a region notorious as a hub for transnational crime. For instance, the border between Vietnam and Cambodia is a hotspot for smuggling activities due to loose management. However, what sets these gangs apart is that they do not stop at typical criminal activities but venture into more complex fields such as financial manipulation or collaborating with international organizations. International collaboration plays a significant role in the expansion of Vietnamese gangs. For example, they have established connections with China's triads and Japan's Yakuza. These partnerships not only yield substantial profits but also enable Vietnamese gangs to adopt more sophisticated strategies from their international allies. However, this also raises the question, does this development signify that Vietnamese gangs have become a global force? Or are they merely dependent on larger organizations? Another factor contributing to the growth of Vietnamese gangs is community ties. Overseas Vietnamese communities often have strong connections through local associations and networks. This inadvertently creates favorable conditions for criminal organizations to establish and maintain their operations. For example, in Vietnamese communities in Europe, many individuals feel pressured to participate in criminal activities for survival. This sparks a debate. Are these communities victims or accomplices in sustaining these gangs? Compared to other criminal organizations such as the Yakuza or triads, Vietnamese gangs have a notable distinction. They operate not only in major urban centers but also in rural or remote border areas. For instance, while the Yakuza focuses on controlling domestic industries, Vietnamese gangs exploit weak management in certain regions to build hubs for drug and contraband transportation. This demonstrates an incredible level of flexibility and adaptability. However, the influence of these gangs comes with significant challenges. Governments in Southeast Asia have increased cooperation to combat transnational crime, but the effectiveness of these efforts remains limited. This raises the question, have these organizations become so sophisticated that they outpace even the strongest efforts of authorities? A notable story illustrating the influence of Vietnamese gangs is a major case at the Vietnam-Cambodia border, where a criminal group was caught transporting drugs worth millions of dollars. Despite being uncovered, key members of this organization evaded law enforcement thanks to underground connections. This story serves not only as a warning but also as evidence of the complexity of these organizations' operations. So, have Vietnamese gangs truly taken control of Southeast Asia? Or are they merely a piece of the larger picture of the underworld? These questions continue to spark debates, especially considering the increasingly sophisticated operations of these organizations. One of the factors that make Vietnamese gangs distinct and fearsome is the way they are organized and operated. Contrary to the common perception that criminal organizations are merely chaotic, disorganized groups, the reality reveals that their structure is complex and meticulously constructed, from the powerful leaders at the top to the grassroots operatives at the local level. Every position within the organization is clearly defined with specific roles and responsibilities. These organizations are often structured like a pyramid. At the apex is the snake's head, an individual with absolute power who makes decisions and oversees the entire system. Below them are the intermediaries, often referred to as right-hand men, who manage specific areas or operations. Finally, At the base are the operatives, or tentacles, lower-level members tasked with executing direct duties such as transporting goods, collecting debts, or carrying out acts of violence when necessary. A hallmark of this structure is decentralization and security. These gangs typically prevent low-ranking members from knowing too much about the system, ensuring that if one person is captured, the organization can continue functioning without interruption. This level of security makes it extremely challenging for law enforcement agencies to investigate and dismantle these groups. A prime example of this security and decentralization is their operation in drug trafficking. Transport routes are often divided into multiple segments, each managed by a separate group. These groups do not directly communicate with one another, and only the leader has full knowledge of the plan. This reduces the risk of the entire system being exposed if one segment of the chain is discovered. Beyond decentralization, Vietnamese gangs also stand out for their recruitment and training capabilities. Recruits are often individuals with close ties to existing members or those who have proven their loyalty. Some organizations even invest in training members in combat, weapons handling, and techniques to evade law enforcement. This makes these gangs more dangerous compared to many other groups. Additionally, the use of modern technology plays a crucial role in their operations. Encrypted messaging apps, online financial transactions, and social media platforms are leveraged to communicate and manage activities remotely. As a result, even under intense scrutiny, these gangs can maintain their operations without disruption. This raises the question: can law enforcement agencies keep up with the technological advancements of these organizations? Meanwhile, compared to other groups such as the Yakuza, known for their intricate family systems, or the triads, with their secretive societies, Vietnamese gangs demonstrate greater flexibility in their organization. This enables them to adapt quickly to changing conditions, particularly in the context of globalization and technological advancement. However, the weakness of this decentralization lies in its potential to cause internal conflicts. There have been instances of internal disputes over power or interests, leading to violent confrontations among members. Such conflicts have been one of the reasons behind the downfall of some major gangs in the past. Does this sophisticated organization make Vietnamese gangs invincible? Or are there vulnerabilities that law enforcement can exploit? In the next section, we will explore the reputation and fear these gangs have cultivated through their actions. Reputation is one of the most crucial factors that helps criminal gangs maintain power and influence. For Vietnamese gangs, reputation is built not only through their criminal activities but also through how they handle enemies and partners. This plays a vital role in protecting and solidifying their position in the underworld. One of the most notable strategies Vietnamese gangs use to build their reputation is brutality. Stories of internal purges or the handling of traitors are often passed around within the community, creating a fearsome image and ensuring that members remain cautious. For example, in a well-known incident, a traitor was dealt with publicly as a warning to anyone considering betraying the organization. Beyond internal discipline, Vietnamese gangs are also renowned for their ability to confront other criminal organizations. In many cases, they have demonstrated their strength and resilience by overtaking markets from powerful rivals like the triads or South American drug cartels. This not only helps them expand their operations but also establishes their status in the eyes of international criminal networks. However, the fear these gangs instill is not limited to the criminal world. In some communities, particularly those under their control, local residents are compelled to respect or abide by the rules they impose. For instance, in certain border areas, these gangs have replaced government roles by providing services such as protection or conflict resolution. The reputation of Vietnamese gangs is further reinforced through their collaboration with international organizations. They are known as reliable partners in smuggling operations due to their ability to deliver on time and maintain absolute discretion. This helps them build extensive networks and earn respect from other criminal groups. However, building a reputation comes with significant risks. On the one hand, it helps these gangs secure loyalty from members and partners. On the other hand, it also makes them a larger target for law enforcement agencies. This raises the question: is reputation truly a long-term advantage? Or is it a double-edged sword that gangs must contend with? These stories of reputation and fear continue to spark debate. Some argue that they are evidence of the cunning and adaptability of Vietnamese gangs. Others suggest that this brutality and secrecy merely mask underlying vulnerabilities within their systems. In the next section, we will delve deeper into the history and origins of these organizations to better understand why they have been able to thrive so powerfully. To better understand the rapid growth of Vietnamese gangs, it is essential to trace back to their early days of formation. In the early 20th century, during the period of French colonial rule in Vietnam, the first criminal groups began to emerge. Initially, these groups were small-scale and operated in impoverished areas where people were exploited and deprived of basic rights. Over time, however, they learned to organize and evolve to cope with the challenges surrounding them. One significant period in the history of Vietnamese gangs was during the Vietnam War. This era of chaos and instability created favorable conditions for these organizations to expand their activities. For example, in South Vietnam, under the influence of the American military presence, gangs exploited corruption to smuggle weapons, drugs, and other goods. These activities not only brought in substantial profits but also helped them build networks with international organizations. After the war, as Vietnam entered a period of reconstruction, economic difficulties and social discontent provided fertile ground for these gangs to grow even stronger. Notably, in the 1990s, when Vietnam opened its economy and integrated into the global market, these organizations quickly seized the opportunity to expand their operations. They extended their reach beyond the domestic sphere to international markets, particularly in Southeast Asia and Europe, where large Vietnamese communities resided. However, the development of these gangs was not without obstacles. Many organizations faced intense crackdowns from law enforcement. For instance, in the early 2000s, a major campaign was launched to dismantle gangs operating along the Vietnam-Cambodia border. While this campaign inflicted significant losses on the organizations, it also demonstrated their remarkable ability to restructure and adapt. One key factor that has allowed these gangs to endure for decades is their capacity to learn and adapt to changing times. For example, as digital tools became widespread, they quickly adopted technology to manage operations and expand networks. This not only minimized risks but also enhanced the efficiency of their illegal activities. That said, the history of Vietnamese gangs raises many questions. Can they continue to survive and thrive in a world increasingly regulated by technology and law enforcement? Or will they face collapse like many other organizations before them? In the next section, we will delve into their strategies for expansion and territorial control to better understand how they maintain power and influence. The story of Vietnamese gangs has provided us with a deep insight into the complexity and sophistication of the underworld. From their early beginnings to their expansion strategies and fearsome reputation, they are not just ordinary criminal organizations but an integral part of the larger picture of international crime. If you find this content intriguing and want to follow more similar stories, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Join us as we continue to uncover untold mysteries.